My name is Joanna Rassias, and I'm going to be talking about my thesis, which is to be chaste, obedient, and accomplished as it relates to Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Austen has painted the perfect picture of what marriage was like in Regency England, with quite possibly one of the most renowned opening lines of any novel. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. From those first lines of Pride and Prejudice, the omniscient narrator reveals her satirical approach to marriage. The first lines should have reflected the honest and transparent nature of what marriage was like at the time, and that by reflecting reality, the lines should have read, "A single woman in possession of no fortune must be in want of a husband." The sheer irony of this sentence introduces the novel's intentions and sets the tone of what Austen thinks of marriage for women, which was to be a wife was to have a career. Austen's Pride and Prejudice has a comedic structure, entertaining its readers with the tumultuous relationship between Elizabeth Bennet, the story's protagonist, and her wealthier male counterpart, Mr. Darcy. This novel is more than a love story. Despite every character being either married or engaged by the end of the novel, some of the women in Pride and Prejudice are not as well matched with their husbands as she is with hers. Many characters, like Charlotte Lucas and Lydia Bennet, marry out of pure necessity, whether that be for security or to salvage their reputations, respectively. During Jane Austen's lifetime, conduct literature that promoted ideal conduct and character for young women was fairly commonplace. It helped to distinguish a woman between merely being an enigma in her own gender to actually contributing to her gender and being a wife. Whether these teachings were in the form of letters, pamphlets, and sometimes full-length novels, conduct literature was popular because it covered virtually a plethora of topics that were meant to instruct and inform women. The conduct manuals that were thought to be popular during her time were about good manners and stressed propriety with the purpose of molding the character of a young woman on how to think, act, and speak in a way in which it was socially and morally superior and, quote, allowed. To be morally superior meant that these pamphlets focused heavily on the preservation of virtue within the female sex. A woman's virtue was reflected in everything, from her expressions to her attitudes, her accomplishments, and even so far as to what she wore and if they were the latest fashions or what carriage she even rode in. John Gregor wrote in A Father's Legacy to His Daughters in 1761 that, quote, "There is a certain gentleness of spirit and manners extremely engaging in your sex, not that indiscriminate attention, that unmeaning simper which smiles on all alike. This arises either from an affection of softness or from perfect insipidity," end quote, in which he foreshadows what this text would be about, and the text is broken up into 4 major topics of religion, behavior, and conduct, amusements, and relationships. Gregor also wrote which amusements are conducive to health. He said, "Some are connected with qualities really useful, as different kinds of women's work, and all the domestic concerns of a family. Some are elegant accomplishments as dress, dancing, music, and drawing, such books as improve your understandings, enlarge your knowledge, and cultivate your tastes, may be considered in a higher point of view than mere amusements. There are a variety of others, which are neither useful nor ornamental, such as play of different kinds." With these conduct manuals, a woman must prepare to read at a young age. Austen was most definitely inspired by this mother in Gisborne's conduct manual as the inspiration for Mrs. Bennet, since she too was so consumed with the idea of her daughters marrying for status. Austen was so influenced by the conduct manuals that occupied much of women's time in society that she quotes another renowned conduct manual, Fordyce's Sermons for the Young Women in Pride and Prejudice. This is the infamous text in which Mr. Collins attempts to read to the Bennet sisters. We can start to read Austen's novel as a modern conduct manual, as she begins to reform what many at the time thought an ideal woman should look like if she were to successfully attain a husband. She also outlines the perfect gentleman in Mr. Darcy, a man capable of reforming his proud ways. Now that we understand Austen's motives, whether they be superficial or obvious, we can identify how she uses each relationship to satirize a certain aspect of marriage. One interesting aspect depicted in this novel is how the mindset of people is controlled by their society. Most of their actions are guided by their consciousness of their standings in society. Mothers hunt for their daughters' husbands, and daughters too shamelessly hunt for theirs. This is what Austen satirizes in the novel, that marriage is purely a contract. Of John Wilkes in 1760 to the time of Queen Caroline of England in the 1820s. Clark offers a unique perspective into the personal lives of those in the uppermost echelon of society, all the way to the top of the royal family. In Pride and Prejudice, where a woman is largely blamed for the scandal surrounding her eventual elopement, even though both parties, if not the groom, was solely to blame, Lydia Bennet, the youngest Bennet's sister, made one of the least advantageous marriages in the novel to George Wickham, a destitute foot soldier. Although their economic and social positions may appear well matched due to their identical habits and attractiveness, Lydia's reputation is ruined when she runs away with Wickham, seemingly out of nowhere, so he can steal her money and pay off gambling debts, unbeknownst to her. Austen uses Lydia and Wickham's relationship as commentary on society's class system. While on the surface the novel is about the relationship between Darcy and Lizzie, the developments between Lydia and Wickham are pivotal points in the plot. Austen belittles the value of their relationship due to it being only sustainable and tolerable in the end with money, as if they are buying each other's affection. Here it is important how Austen shows just how important the legality of marriage was at the time, and how volatile a woman's reputation was if she was to step outside of her courtship and her duty with her family. Lastly, this is an example of the transfer of legal responsibility of Lydia from one man to another, from Mr. Bennet to Wickham. It is through this example of marriage, where Austen includes her personal critiques on the imbalance of social expectations placed on both men and women, the social pressure to legitimize a union through marriage, and the economics that drive male intentions in regard to getting married. Love may be at the center, but Austen warns us about the pitfalls of marriage when love evaporates. What is a woman left with? She is married for security and tolerates her own marriage, like Charlotte Lucas. She retains money from her husband for her children, not for her own use, like Lady Catherine de Bourgh. And a woman is left stripped with no status in society or the law, like Lydia. Look where love got the Bennets and Queen Charlotte of Brunswick, as I will discuss in my thesis. Thank you.